Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice to start a career. Gain skills in fields like cybersecurity and education. More at tncc.edu.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Another View producer Lisa Godley, filling in for Barbara Hamley. Happy birthday, Barbara. We've called a special gathering of the Another View Roundtable to discuss Roe v. Wade. How will the Supreme Court ruling impact women of color? How will it impact America as a whole? Does this set the precedent for other age-old laws to be overturned? Our Another View Roundtable is geared up and ready to share their thoughts, and we'd like to hear from you. Another View will be right back after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Another View producer Lisa Godley, filling in for Barbara Hamley, who is taking some well-deserved time off and celebrating her birthday this week. Barbara, I hope you are spoiling yourself. Well, we have called a special edition of the Roundtable today. It's a conversation that can be heard just about anywhere. Who will be impacted most by the Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade ruling? And is there anything those opposed to the ruling can do about it? Does the ruling now endanger other laws? There are so many questions and just as many opinions. Our Another View Roundtable is in the house and ready to share their thoughts. Joining me here in the studio, relationship expert Dr. Alvean Lyons. Hi, Alvean. So glad to see you.
Me too.
And NSU political science professor Carol Pretlow. Glad you're here,
everybody.
And joining us by phone, Norfolk City Treasurer Daun Hester. Hi, Daun.
Hey there, hey there.
Political consultant and president of the Hampton NAACP, Gayleen Connaughton, will be joining us a little later on. And we have a special guest today, Portia Reddick White, the NAACP's Vice President of Policy and Legislative Affairs. Portia, welcome to the conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I am going to start with you because I feel like we need the foundation before we begin this conversation so that you can explain the Roe v. Wade ruling, the Supreme Court's ruling. Let's start with you explaining that.
Sure. So I think we all remember back in May, who doesn't, when something leaked. And that something was a document that it was being leaked saying that, there was going to be an overturning of that reversal of Roe v. Wade. And folks didn't want to believe it. It was a week after that, really, that drafted opinion that addressed Roe v. Wade, that the Senate during that time, at this time, held the vote on the Women's Health Protection Act, which is a bill to protect a person's ability to determine whether to continue to end a pregnancy or to protect a healthcare provider's ability to provide abortion services. But, of course, that vote did fail. But I want to take you a little bit further. We're going to go back further. And where I want to go is really to the election of 2016 and prior, even before that, really. I think we all remember when there was an opening of the court of Justice Scalia. And when he passed away, there was an announcement by then President Barack Obama to appoint Merrick Garland, who happens to be our Attorney General now. That was 2016. And, of course, there was somebody who wouldn't let that happen, and that somebody was Mitch McConnell, who would not give him even a vote And so they wanted to wait until that next president came into play. And that next president, of course, was Donald Trump. And when Donald Trump came on, he suggested and brought to mind Gorsuch. And Gorsuch ended up being that justice. And beyond Gorsuch, President Donald Trump was able to also appoint, and due to replacing Justice Kennedy and Justice Ginsburg, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. We all remember who they are. And actually, through all of their Senate hearings, I think if we were to pull tape back and listen to those tapes, you would hear them being asked a question. And that question was, what do you think about Roe v. Wade? Is it law? Has it passed the time of being supportive so it won't be reversed? And, of course, they said it was all established law. Well, so be it. That's what they said then. So where we are today, to cut into matters a little bit quickly here, they actually, Samuel Alito said that the 1973 Roe ruling was being overruled because it was wrong and the arguments were weak and damaging. So they thought it was an abuse of judicial authority and reversed it. That's where we are today. So this new law of the land, so to speak, was overturning a 1973 ruling. So that's where we are. The only folks who really support it, not overturning this, of course, were the justices that we know as the one who actually retired today, as of today, right? Justice Breyer, Justice Sotomayor, and Justice Kagan. So that's where we are.
Okay.
And the reason being is because folks didn't really come out to vote and make that election key. And so there was an appointment of these very conservative judges. And that's why we are where we are.
Gotcha. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that as we go, but I want to go around the round table. I'm going around the room, and I want to find out. First of all, I'm going to start, Daun. Since I'm looking at you, I want to start with you, and I want to get your initial reaction when you heard that, okay, Roe v. Wade has been overturned, and I also want you to follow up with that on. Now that you've been able to do a little research on it, hear a little bit more about it, watch a couple news stories, that kind of thing, are you still thinking the same thing, or has something else come to your mind that concerns you even more than your initial reaction? Go ahead.
Well, I think that, and I just lost my picture, but I think that because we had prior knowledge that it was going to happen with the leaking of the document, that we knew it was coming. I didn't see that there was going to be any kind of change. And so once the ruling was official, it's just like, okay, we knew it was coming. It's now official. What are we going to do? And I think that others who are in the midst of the journey that we're on, so I'm going to call it a fight. I'm going to call it a journey, that on either side are like, what are we going to do? And we've already heard you got to vote. But then after, and not a but after processing it, it's like now, in my mind, how do we keep Virginia so that we're a safe haven where we have places for women to come to and Virginians to go to if they need this choice? And that's a big part of what I think is important, that we need to make sure that we're able to maintain across the country, is that people have somewhere to go. Because some women will have the means to go wherever they want to go. But many will not even be able to go from one state to the next state. So we're going to have to put in a different type of, I don't know what you call it, but just like we had the Underground Railroad that took us to our freedom, then we're going to need a railroad that will take us to safe choices and healthy living. And then we've got to make sure that, and I'm going to slow down because I know we got a long way to go. Voting is the bottom line. Voting is the bottom line. And you can't not vote because you're frustrated with how the world is right now. That is never an option to not vote. So I'm going to stop right there.
Okay. All right. Alvean, your initial reaction when you said, okay, this is real. This has happened. This has been overturned. Mm-hmm. What went through your mind initially?
I think that a piece of me really has accepted the fact that America is basically California. And what I mean by that is that we have become more accustomed to living with earthquakes. Okay, so that there are things that keep happening now that are changing the landscape over and over again. And politically, it feels like we live on a fault line, that at any given moment, as a byproduct of, our previous president, we can watch things shift beneath our feet so quickly. So adjusting to living like that made it less shocking for me. But what I was curious about, which only time is going to tell, is what happens when the dog catches the car, right? So what will this mean now? This was my initial thought. What will this mean now? What will Republicans run on if the thing that you've been running on to galvanize your base has happened? What happens next? And for a minute, I thought it would weaken the argument. But that I was incorrect about, because immediately the conversation then began. Now the work isn't finished. We have to go to get it banned in every state. So it's not just let's make sure that this changes at the federal level. There will be no place in which this could be possible. So that ensures a level of political excitement around, we've got this win, now we've got to pursue all of these others, which is going to be interesting to see how that unfolds at the local level, because before it was just about the Supreme Court. But this is when we start to see what this is really about. And I totally agree with Daun. I totally agree with Portia. At the end of the day, whatever values you're really living by, you're going to have to vote those values, and you're going to have to vote those values like this is your last vote, and know that it will never be perfect. You're never going to have a perfect team, so to speak, but you're always going to have to be engaged if it matters. So there were a couple of different things that crossed my mind. They've all opened into some very interesting conversations because, I also spend a lot of time in faith-based spaces with some of the work that I do, advisory work, and how that's unfolding, that even in the church, it's not decided, and evangelical versus Black versus Protestant versus Catholic, every one of those spaces is having this debate in a biblical fashion. So it's not just what we were seeing out there politically. The biblical and the political are starting to become very close bedfellows at this point. So I am very curious about where this is ultimately going to go, but I have a lot of feelings about it. So,
well, that's what we're here for, to talk about. Carol, your initial thought and now.
Well, I'm a little bit in a different time frame or a different perspective, because legally I was looking at, okay, all right, I get the Supreme Court, I understand majority, minority, but I saw this coming. And in seeing it coming, I was like, okay, hit the ground running. What's the next line of defense? Now, from the ground up, and this has nothing really to do with the court itself and how we can adjust the situation legally. It's what is an average American person thinking? Okay, hopefully it's not illegal abortions, because if there is a situation in which someone is just saying, I'm just going to go and do this, and there is a consequence. Maybe they get an infection, or maybe they have problems breathing, or whatever. There's nowhere to go if you have gotten your abortion illegally. Okay, but here's another thing. There are pills online that you can get from another country. Now, I didn't know that until this morning, and I was looking at the responses of countries, Sweden, and Biden mentioned one other in his speech this morning. And I said, okay, so you go online, you purchase the pills, you take it here. What happens if you get sick? Well, you don't mention that you got it out of the country. You just like, I'm sick and it happened naturally. Poor me. This is how my body reacted. What is a doctor going to do? They're probably going to just treat you and go on. So there's that. Then there's a situation of going to another state where it is legal. Well, that's for those people that have money, because the transportation is going to cost, going to a facility there is going to cost. You might have a wait time, and in checking some of the states, I looked at their wait time might be anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks. So that means you got to find some place to stay, you got to eat. All of that is just escalating the social discord that this is going to cause. And so aside from the legal and political analysis, here is the direct implications. And then there is a whole nother illegal dimension. People that do it illegally right in your hometown or right where you are, if there are infections or something, you can't say, well, I just had an illegal abortion and I need to go to the hospital. Then there are gonna be some legal implications there, not only for the provider but for the person that got the abortion.
Gotcha. Portia, I have a question for you. Opinion polls show that most Americans opposed overturning Roe. So how do you see this impacting the midterm elections?
Well, I think it's probably going to be, I'm optimistic. I'm thinking that now that people are waking up, I think they will come to the polls. And maybe that's just my hope, but I think they will come to the polls and vote their mind and vote their conscience and their value. I was thinking the fact that for me, I have a 14-year-old, and from what I also read, I'm very concerned that her generation will be stuck with some of the things that we've talked about, just heard previously on the fact that, what do you do if you have a situation? Do you take a pill from another country? Do you go to another state? I mean, I am really concerned. So that's how it affected me. But I think that other women, specifically African-American women, Black women, I think this will actually catapult them to the polls. I think that you will have a liberal, because I think we have seen this divide of race within our country, and I think you'll see a lot of liberal white women probably doing the same thing. Now, I think it's something that folks like Trump, they're afraid of it. We've seen him say, "Oh no, now, what is this going to do to the midterms?" So I think it has probably and will elevate people to get out and to vote. At least that's my desire and my hope.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Alvean, it seems like people they're on one side or the other. They're either pro-life or pro-choice. Talk to me about the nuances.
Well, so what's interesting is that we've become so polarized that we have now affiliated our personhood to binary concepts. I'm either a Republican or I'm a Democrat. I'm either pro-life or I'm pro-choice. And almost ignoring that there's so many people who exist inside of the middle of those things, that there are policies that they respect on both sides of the aisle. There are positions they may hold that really fall on both sides of the aisle. And so the nuance of that is often lost because that's really the human factor in it all, right? We forget that humans are multidimensional. So, which is why someone can hold a position to say, for instance, mine is a perfect example. I am pro-life for me. Okay. I was young when I had my first child. I was in college and we were totally and completely broke. But I had an incredible partner who I'm still married to this day. He's hot and beautiful, y'all. Don't be jealous. Okay. Love my man. I'm so glad that we made the decision that we made for us, right? But my position for me, given that I had education and opportunity and a supportive partner and access and a family that I can count on and transportation, and the list goes on and on. There are all kinds of privileges that I lived inside of that made that decision easier for me to make. I already had my own place, even in college, right? So that was for me to use that lens and to lay that on top of someone else who has had exactly the opposite experiences is completely unfair from a human perspective, right? And so I can exist, and I'm a Jesus freak. I love God, right? But the Bible says, I set before you life and death. Choose life. But what we forget is that we were offered the choice. And ultimately, it was our decision what choice we were going to make. And if our goal, as those who identify as conservative, is to be pro-life, that is not just being pro-birth. And there is a difference, right? Because the life begins after. I'm not saying it's not, because when my baby was moving around and dancing to music, I'm not saying that wasn't life. I'm not saying that when you get to that level, right? But I am saying that where it really becomes real is when that baby comes out, right? And once he or she, and for those who identify differently, or they are born, now begins the next level of work. And if we want people to have children, then we should make it easy for them to have children and to have them healthy and safe and supported. And we're not doing a cradle to prison pipeline because we completely abandon you the minute the baby is born. We judge you as a single mom for the fact you decided to have this baby. So we mistreat you in the church and out of the church. So there's no safe place. So the same people who are telling you to have this baby abandon you when you do and judge you for the fact that you were even in the situation. When we start talking about exclusion, that there are no exclusions, rape or incest, and we're discussing contraception even, Clarence Thomas, then we are just saying that we are backing you into a corner as a human. And then you have to deal with the consequences of everything that comes with the life that we forced you into because you no longer deserve a choice. The last thing I will say is I find it very interesting that I can't find one policy that pertains to a man's reproductive system. Not one. So when we start talking about contraceptive, because the lay argument is that you are preventing life, then I just want to know, are we going to make self-gratification for men illegal also? That's all I'm saying. Because you just killed 1 million people right there, okay? Just in a matter of minutes, 1 million people weren't able to be born for your little moment privately. So if you're not willing to arbitrate that, then how are you in a position to arbitrate anything else beyond that if we're going to be so absolute about the fact that life is meant to be created? Where are we going with this, and where does it end?
Absolutely. Not to interrupt, but I agree completely because I deal with students and I talk to them personally and on a private level. And then when I see kids who have been in this situation, who are raising kids and they don't have money or they're living in a homeless shelter, I am angry at a society who, if you are going to support this, why aren't you supporting it all down the line? When they need food, where are you? When they need housing, if they're lucky enough to get to school or to college, where are you when their textbooks cost $300? I mean, hello. Right. Where are you when they don't have transportation? So to say, well, I'm opposed to abortion, well, you should also be opposed to people being homeless and foodless and not having medical care. Because that's what it means
to be pro-life,
and
right?
That's
a whole continuum. That's not just pro-fetus. That's not just pro the moment that this baby comes into the world and gives its first cry. Are we there for every cry thereafter as a country?
Right now, our society
is not.
I gotcha. I hear you, ladies. All right. If you're just joining us, we're looking at the impact the Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade ruling we'll have on women of color and America as a whole. I'm Another View producer Lisa Godley, and I'm joined by the Another View Roundtable Plus One, relationship expert Dr. Alvean Lyons, Norfolk City Treasurer Daun Hester, NSU political science professor Carol Pretlow, political consultant and president to the Hampton NAACP, Gayleen Knoyton, will be joining us in minutes. And the special guest, our special guest, I should say, Portia Reddick White, the NAACP's Vice President of Policy and Legislative Affairs. If you'd like to join the conversation, please give us a call at 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. All righty, I had a question for Portia. Now, according to a Gallup poll, Portia, only about 25% of the people polled said they had a great deal of confidence in the Supreme Court. And that's the lowest approval rating in 50 years. So what does that mean for the court's credibility? And can we expect to see a movement underway to add more justices to the court? What are your thoughts?
Well, that movement is already underway to add justices. And really, just my personal view, I'm not so sure if adding more justices would be that much helpful. It really depends upon folks who are initially appointed and then who appoints them, as we have seen. So whether it's a conservative or a liberal or not so conservative, because I don't think our presidents have really been that liberal, those that have been president that are of the other party. So you have your two parties. But I honestly think that we will probably remain, because I see and have heard that President Biden is not in favor of adding more justices to the court. So the opinion of the court from the folks out here, from us, regular people, we're not so beholden to the fact that they're moving in the right direction and that they're doing the right things. And all I can say again is that means those other two branches of government do have to come up to par to help things move along. The congressional, the legislative piece, Congress and the House, not Congress and the House, but the Senate and the House. So, as well as the presidency. So we do have three branches of government, and the executive, the judicial, and the legislative body. And I think that what we have to do then is depend more on those other two bodies to help establish processes and laws in a much more even-keeled manner to go forward. So, it started this whole placement to add to the court, but I don't think it's going to be productive, in my opinion.
Okay, Daun, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to throw the same question to Carol when you're done. I want to know, in your mind, what do you think is next? Judge Thomas wrote that he wants the court to re-examine precedents on cases dealing with contraception, same-sex marriage, and same-sex sex. Other conservative judges say, they disagree with that, but they shocked the nation when they overturned Roe. So what are your thoughts about where we're going from here?
I think that the justices have enough members who will support what Justice Thomas mentioned. And there is the potential that we could lose all of those rights that we felt were going to be ours for a lifetime. And I think in the revelation of this, in our conversations with our constituencies, it is just important for us to help in understanding that unless it is law by our Congress, our Senate, and our House, and signed by our president, it is a judicial decision based on precedent. So our conversations have to change with individuals for for us to help them understand. I mean, it started with voting rights, y'all. That was the first one when they knocked that down. So that's why I said it's just a revelation. So we got step number one, voting rights. And then people got mad because we couldn't get anything through the Senate. Well, you can't get anything through the Senate if you don't have enough people who believe the same things that you do to be able to even get a law written, to be able to have the president sign it. So that's just one piece. So we went from voting rights, then we went to this. So, yes, those others are coming. And, yes, all of people who are working on this effort need to be trying to figure out ways that people can continue to get contraception, ways that what will happen when marriages that people thought would be for a lifetime because of law for communities won't be anymore. So if as a gay couple we have gotten married, and then when it is stricken down, I pray that it isn't, because that's not none of my business, but the law says that you can. But when it's struck down, then what does that mean? Am I automatically divorced? So what do I have to do? So we don't even have procedures in place. And, you know, I believe in procedures. Some people don't. But if you're going to strike something, there's got to be something in its place. And we have to get anyway, I'm going back to everything. I'm going to end it this way. If we don't vote, y'all, we get what we get. And that's not a good thing right now in the way the world is going.
Okay. Portia, were you saying you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I do. I just want to say, Daun, you are exactly right. You actually said what I was trying to say, that the other two branches, the ones that make the law at this point, are the ones that are going to have to be stronger. The Congress, that legislative body of the Senate and the House, they're going to have to put laws into place where the executive, the president, can sign so that the judicial can't tamper with that, because it'll be a law. And that is why we are moving forward to push codifying, Roe v. Wade, basically, so that it can't be, so it goes back as a law per se. And if people don't come out and vote, you're right, the House or the Senate will not favor and pass along those laws that are favorable to people. And just as, you've indicated, Justice Thomas has indicated other laws that they're probably going to strike down, even though, they're saying, oh, no, we're not going to go there. But they also said they weren't going to do what they did when they took the oath at the judicial, at the hearings, the Senate hearings. They said, oh, no, it's established law. But they backed it up. So you're right. We've got to vote.
Gotcha. Okay. Carol, do you want to add something? I'm going to take a call.
I have nothing to add except, unfortunately, now I distrust the whole body. I mean, and I hate to say that because I'm a person that deals with people as individuals and says, okay, I trust this person, I don't know. But when you see collectively things going down, and this has not just been a sudden thing, this has been coming along from the time we looked at the appointments, the last appointments to the court. I said, okay, this is going to be a disaster, and it is proven to be a disaster, and I'm trying to figure out how to get beyond that, except I do agree, vote, 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 but be very selective as to who you vote for. Examine their records, examine what they have done, not just what they tell you they will do, and not just the spot coming to campus to do your photo op. I'm sorry, that was biased. Coming to campus to do your photo op and then getting in a position that you ignore what you said previously. So this hurts. It hurts a lot.
Alvean, I've heard people say, because I listen, it's like, well, okay, but, maybe it won't, there may be laws here that I can't do this, but, maybe why can't somebody just jump on a bus and go to another state? That's not expensive. Or, come back home if what Carol was mentioning earlier, they have to wait a couple of weeks and then go back. It's more like it's just.
And then if they stay there,
easy.
How are they going to afford it? I mean, you got to pay for a hotel, or unless you have relatives or somebody that you can live with.
Well, I think that the point that you're making is that it's very easy to be dismissive when you are privileged. Mm-hmm. That's the point.
Yeah.
And privilege isn't just about whether you're black, white, male, female, young, old. Privilege is economics in a lot of ways, right? So the fact that you have freedom to make these choices, the fact that you have access, the fact that you have the financial wherewithal to be able to support the choices that you're making, those are all privilege. So yes, when you're married, when you have access, when you have opportunity, when you have money, when you have your own place, when you have family all over, when you have family that will step in, so that even if you're broke, you have family members that have money so that you can call an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, or whomever. But there are some families, and more than we like to acknowledge, that don't even have that opportunity because their family's in the same economic situation that they're in. So it's very easy for us to be flippant about things, to say things like, she shouldn't have gotten pregnant in the first place, right? As if we were by ourselves because we are alien creatures and we're able to just impregnate ourselves with a thought, that, we just decided we wanted to make this hard for ourselves. So, why didn't she do something to prevent that? Well, why didn't he not touch her? How about that? Okay. Because he had just as much culpability inside of this. And if we're going to require women to have babies, and you can feel however you feel about it, then we equally need to require the men to stay home and take care of them. So if it's okay, if you're saying, just if we want to play out this nonsensical argument, it's okay that you're saying that, okay, I have to do this for these 9 months. I have no choice, just for the sake of this conversation. But after the 9 months, I get to hand this baby to the person who wanted it because I wasn't ready to be a mom. I don't have the wherewithal. I may have mental health issues. The list can go on and on. I may be suffering my own traumas that I haven't worked through. I don't want to lend those on to my child, and I'm not prepared. I wasn't prepared to give birth in the first place, but because now I have to, the person I made this baby with, who is capable of all of those things, this is now his kid, right? But we're not saying that this is going to impact the men that played 50% of the role in this. We are saying that for 100% of the person who played 50%, you will carry 100% of this responsibility. And I could even play with your argument if your argument was balanced. But there's no balance inside of this argument. It's just she shouldn't have done it, as if she did it by herself, as if she controlled it. What happens in rape? You're doing all the right things and someone violates you. Exactly. Now you're telling me my whole life I'm going to have to relive the trauma of something I never asked for in the first place. And I don't have the option of being able to heal independent of that reminder. And I know people who will say that a child is a child, and I'm a mom. I 100% understand what you're saying. But what I'm saying is when your father creeps in your bed and you find yourself pregnant by your own father, incest, what are you supposed to do as a child? What are you supposed to do? So we are pretending like there is not more trauma that exists inside of our world. If there wasn't, I wouldn't have a job. I never run out of clients because there's trauma everywhere. But we like to pretend that it isn't. And it's the ugly boogeyman that is very part of our American culture and ignored in our lexicon.
Wow. We were talking a little earlier, and it has come up repeatedly throughout our conversation about the importance of voting and getting people to the polls. Mm-hmm. If you don't like something, make a difference. Get out there and vote. Portia, what are you saying to younger people when they come to you and they talk to you about their concerns about this? What are you telling them?
Well, I'm telling them that they definitely do need to voice their opinion, and they need to educate themselves. So they've got to be educated in understanding that each state out there, states are making their decisions. Many states have made their decision. 13 states have these trigger bans, right, that will ban abortions within 30 days. And you've got other states that are getting ready to even go into session now to make their decision on how they're going to manage and handle this ruling from their perspective. So, unfortunately, the divide of the country is very real. So you do see some of the very liberal states protecting abortion rights, and you see some of the very conservative states actually moving to make sure that it is a ban. And so I'm telling young folks, first of all, educate yourself. Second of all, get involved. Use your voice. Use your thoughts. Use the artistic values or the artistic gifts, that, have been God-given to you to share your thoughts and to move forward the movement to whatever you believe. I accept the fact that there are people on both sides of this argument. And frankly, I believe that everybody has a right to choose. And I cannot say that what I would do in an instance, but I don't think anyone can say what anyone else should do in an instance. I mean, you go back to the fact that we live in these United States, the home of the free, the brave, and we're getting ready to go through this July 4th holiday where we're celebrating life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Really?
Right.
So I tell them, go ahead and, pursue happiness, pursue life, and voice how you feel.
Okay. Daun?
I just want to add on because, I agree with everything that we've been saying. But there, as we're engaging our communities that surround us and are beyond where our voices are heard, we want to make choices for ourselves. We want that right in all things that's our life. I want to extend that to we got to make choices for our country because our country, as divided as it is, could move to an autocratic country. And so in our selfishness, we have our own things that we want to be able to do. We want to be able to go, come, please, make decisions about our lives. If we want that to continue, then you do have to make that decision about your country, which involves voting, because right now that's the option that we have. The only other thing I wanted to say about where we are with the decision that the Supreme Court has made, I just need to get out there that it is wonderful to look at our new Supreme Court justice. I have her on my screen.
Oh, I want to
she
see
is
that.
sworn in, and it's just marvelous that it's official. She still got to have the investiture and all that later on with the party and what have you, but it's official. The other thing, though, is that, and this is me, nobody else got to agree with this one. I think women make better decisions, and women are better negotiators because women are also listeners, and that even in this critical juncture that we're in now for women who have to make decisions about their bodies in various states, I think that even the women on both sides of this issue coming together to put in place the things that we know that a family will need, a woman will need in making this decision, I think that is a bridge where we can come together to have the housing, to have the food, to have the shelter, to have the medical care. That is a place where we can begin to put in place that, I call it the Underground Railroad. Somebody will come up with something just a little bit better because I just know the Underground Railroad and it worked. People came together to put things in place. And so I think that women on both sides of this, once we get past our hurt, will hopefully come together and begin to put something in place to help women who have to make decisions about their bodies.
Thank you, Daun. We're going to take a call now. Rick from Norfolk. Rick, thank you for calling Another View. Go right ahead.
Hi, I'm a huge fan. My African-American husband and I both love listening. I'm Caucasian. We We screwed up in 2016 by not supporting a candidate. Some women didn't like her because she was too strong, and I've heard so many things. But now we're stuck with everything that happened during his presidency. How do we get rid of these Supreme Court justices without them dying off? We can't go another 20 or 30 years. We can even go 10 more years. We'll be back where we were in the 1800s. So how, I'm going to hang up, let you respond, but how do we get rid of them legally so that this country can move forward? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for calling, Rick. Portia or Carol, because I thought that was an appointment for life, but
it is an appointment for life. But there is one of them at least that might be on the verge of being gotten rid of because of his wife's entanglement with the insurrection of January 6th. So my point of view is push hard and on, them doing what they need to do. And there's been a justice or two that has been held up on charges before, so it's not unheard of. So I think Mr. Thomas really desires a deep look. So there's one. But really, that might be it. And so that's why I say the way to codify these laws that need to be codified would be through the legislative act. And that's why we have to vote, because we have to codify these other laws. I mean, the LGBTQ rights that are out there that are hanging in the balance, those rights can be codified. We wanted to codify and have been pushing forward on the voting rights. Daun is exactly right. That's the first thing we lost, but we are trying to push to make sure that's codified. That didn't happen in January either, when that was up for a vote in the Senate. So the Senate actually held a big hand because of that 60 vote issue that they have. You got to get 60 votes to get things moving in the Senate. And it doesn't exist. And then you have also the fact that when we do get the opportunity to pull folks and bring them in the court, we really need to make sure that the person who is nominating that person is a person that has the right values to help put the right person there. And all I have to say, I got to say something about Justice now, Ketanji Brown Jackson. It is just so real of this moment that she now sits on this court. It doesn't change the balance. It's still the 6-3 balance, but it still makes a difference because we have somebody there now who has eyes, ears, and skin that looks like many of us who are going to experience some of this this pain of not being able to make some of these choices now. So, yeah, had to say that. But thank you, caller. I hope I was helpful.
Okay.
So,
Alvean, go ahead.
Yes.
And then I'm going to go back to Carol. Go ahead.
So two quick things that maybe three quick things I want to say. One is that I think it's important as we choose, as we vote, as we engage, that we understand how valuable elections are that are not just the national election. Okay, because if everything is kicked back down to the states, then your state representatives become even more important than you might have thought they were, because that's the enactment that's going to affect you locally. All right, so that's item number one. Item number two is the disingenuous nature of Clarence Thomas. Notice that he did not mention Loving versus Virginia in any of the cases that needed to be reevaluated. Okay. You know why? Okay. Because of who our spouse is. Because this is what privilege affords, that I only want to make decisions that are going to affect you, not the ones that are going to affect me. So that was totally and wholly disingenuous. Then on top of that, let me also add that skin folk aren't always kinfolk. All right. So when you vote, as Carol referenced previously, know what and who you're voting for. Do not vote based on a package, because Clarence represents some of the very communities by package that are going to be most greatly impacted. But his heart is not connected to those communities. So do not assume by virtue of the fact that you're putting a woman in that she's going to be pro-woman issues, or a person of color in, they're going to be pro-person of color issues, or you thought he was conservative and it turns out, his heart is actually a little more liberal than you thought. Make sure you know who you're voting for. So I'm a little cautious when people get excited just because you see somebody that looks like us. Just because you look like us doesn't mean you love like us. Two very different things. So we need to do our homework as we engage, but get involved in what happens locally, because that's when you're going to feel it.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Carol.
and finally, vote. But also, as we are making decisions about who we're going to vote for, consider on the back end somebody who might work for a constitutional amendment that would expand the base of the court. Because I think that not only are we looking at it from an African American perspective, but there are other minorities that need to be represented on the court as well. So I would say let's think voting and getting involved in the upcoming election, and then at the same time figuring out what we can do to expand the base of the court itself.
Okay, well, ladies, we've got maybe about 2 minutes
Coming.
left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I'm going to give each of you about 30 seconds here for a final thought. Portia, I'm going to start with you.
Final thought is really what Ketanji Brown kind of just shared. Perseverance. You have to persevere. And that's the message that I would pass on to young, old, folks on the phone, folks listening on the radio. We all have a choice, and everyone should be given a choice. So persevere and move forward with the movement and stand your ground.
All righty, Daun, final thoughts?
That in supporting candidates and selecting candidates, you can support candidates who are not in your state financially and helping them, making phone calls for them. I'm supporting 2 Senate candidates, one in North Carolina, one in Florida, so we can increase that Senate. And codified means that it is now law. For everybody that may not understand what our policymaker Portia was saying, codified means it's law. And so it is written in stone. And so I just wanted people to understand that. And just don't ever give up. Carol, don't be discouraged. This is life that we're living, up and down. We get over the hump, and then we go to the next step. But we can never give up. We must always persist.
Carol, 30 seconds.
I agree. Always persist. And I'll leave you with a note from my dad. You have 7 minutes to cry, then you better hit the ground running. So we got to hit the ground running and get in there and build our knowledge base, because people are afraid to say, I don't know. Well, if you don't know, figure out how you can know by getting information and expanding your base so that you will understand.
Alvean, last 30 seconds belong to you.
Yes, I think that it's really important to remember that the mission has to be greater than the moment. What we have decided and who we've decided we want to be as a country. There are a lot of things and a lot of cues that are coming to us to suggest that we may never be able to be that. But it can't be what it is that's presented in front of you right this second, that you make a decision about who we're going to be forever. We have to decide that our mission is to make sure that America's as great as her promise. And because of that mission, we cannot let the moment speak louder to us, that we allow ourselves to be completely paralyzed by the pain that people are experiencing in these decisions. But instead of being paralyzed by the pain, we've got to find purpose inside of it. And that's what has to have us move.
Wonderful. Ladies, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedules to come into the studio today for this incredible conversation. I thank you all so very, very much. If you feel like this one or any of these programs might benefit you somehow, please reach out. Next week, I will be back in the studio as Barbara continues her time off to talk to you about some enterprising businesses here in the community. Our theme music was composed by Jay Sennett. A big thank you to Jordan Christie, who graciously filled in for me, and Todd Washburn, our audio engineer. Todd, thank you. Howie Smith, my fabulous intern, his last day. All the best to you, Howie. Thank you for everything. I'm Lisa Godley. Thank you so much for spending your noonday hour with us on Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.
Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice to start a bachelor's degree since tuition is 1/3 the cost of four-year schools. More at tncc.edu.